Linh-chan and Dimi-chan, write code. Today we are going to be making, or remaking I should say, a small Mac app that I needed to write. So recently we've started a Let's Play channel, and we've been recording us playing games and talking about various topics. And we've come across an issue. So I'm using iMovie as a lazy way of editing everything because I don't want to overcommit to something before we really get started. And the best way to not overcommit to something is definitely not writing a piece of software to help you do it. Basically, our problem was that recorded footage from like SD capture would have this weird crop to it, and it would be squished, even though it was originally widescreen. So the screen thing was a circle, for instance. So I created a piece of software that turns that into this. So it resizes the video and it crops out anything and it resizes it to whatever raster size you want. And it does a Langkos transform. I think that's what it's called. Layman's terms for fancy schmancy resizing algorithm. And that does a good job at preserving like contrast and things like that. So basically, we are going to be recreating the app that did this. And to give you an idea of what it looks like, you can right-click on any video file. So we are running on an older computer, since the newer computer is the one recording all of this. But the older computer can't transcode video very well, so I made a very small 1-second version of that clip above that basically just shows the frames. That way we can see if there's any difference. And basically what's going to happen is if we did not have this, we can right click on this, open with the video resizer app, and it will show a little video resizer queue, kind of like Archiver does when you double click a zip or any sort of archive, and it will re-encode it such that it has a better framing to it. So that's what we're going to be creating today, and I hope you enjoy watching us make that. So this is going to be a small Mac app that's going to be written in ObjectiveC, since I'm a young old-timer ObjectiveC programmer, and I'm not 100% comfortable with Swift enough to do it live. However, since Lynn is learning Swift, she is going to translate this app into Swift at a later time, and you can watch her doing that. So it'll be like 2 lessons in one.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. So before you cry that I'm cheating, I am cheating. I did write this app already, so I'm going to be referencing it from time to time as I forget what step I'm on, since I have short-term memory. But basically, I'm going to be recreating it from scratch so you can watch the process, the whole thought process of making a little Mac app like this. And feel free to chime in on the Twitch chat. I think that works, but I don't know. We'll find out. Someone retweeted, and this is going to get a lot of views all of a sudden. Hopefully. Thanks, Steve. Anywho, I'll be starting by making a new Xcode project. And I'm going to be moving the mic. Sorry for the auditory problem. I don't want to bump into it while we are coding, because that's going to make unpleasant noises. And since the mic is on the table, any movement we do on the table will get picked up on the mic. So, awesome. Let's try not to do that too much.
Is that good?
Yeah, it should be good. So we're going to get started with a new Xcode project. And as I said before, this is going to be a Mac app, Cocoa, and it's going to be Objective-C. So sorry, guys who are looking to learn Swift, you'll have to wait till Lynn learns how to translate Objective-C into Swift, and then you can watch her remake the same exact app in Swift.
Hopefully it won't take too long.
I will try to help her as much as I can, so that way we can get you an update to this video soon. But until then, you get to watch my thought process in my native speaker language of choice. So we're going to call this video Resizer. Is that how you spell Resizer?
Yeah, good enough. If it's not.
And then here.
I mean, you can call it the Boogeyman if you want to.
I'll use my good old-fashioned company name. And we're not going to use storyboards because for this kind of thing, we want like that queue window to pop up and then we want it to disappear after we're done. And storyboards makes that kind of process complicated in some cases. They're great for simpler apps, but anything that has like a custom interaction gets a little complicated. So I'm just not going to use them. And we don't care about UI tests and unit tests for this since it is a very small project. So we're going to go ahead and create this project, and we'll create it on the desktop, and we'll let Git have fun. So as it is, sure, have fun, Xcode. As it is, this is like an empty hull of an application. So there's nothing to it just yet, so let's build and run and see what it gives us. So yay, we got a video resizer window, which is admittedly not much, but we're going to improve that. So as you saw before, we had like a queue window, so we'll be adding that eventually. But first, kind of like the first thing I want to handle is the document interaction. So basically, we want a way that when the application launches, we want it to we want it to actually ask for a video file to open up and work from there. So what we'll do to get that working is we'll go into our AppDelegate, and there are a few delegate calls that are specific for file handling, specifically when you double click a file. So for example, if we were in the Finder and we double clicked this, or we said open with, so that was the example I gave before, or if you directly drag on top of the icon like this, that's another way to open stuff. So in order to be able to do that, there is a delegate call, which is called application open file. So application. And Lynn is at hands in the chat room, so if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and she will let me know, and then we can answer questions. So I want this to be a pleasant process for everyone involved, and I hope you can learn a lot from just picking at my brain. So the delegate is called, the delegate method is called application open file. And this is going to be called whenever a file is either double clicked or dragged onto the icon. This expects us to let the system know if we were successful or not. So for now, we're just going to say return yes. And this will let us drag stuff onto it. And that should be fairly well hooked up. Then we also need to tell the system what kind of files we are interested in. And the easiest way to do this is just to go into our project and navigate to, I believe it's in info, and navigate to the document types. So this is not necessarily a document-based application where we have a subclass of NS document to represent our file. It's much simpler in how it's organized. So the way we're actually going to do it is we're just going to make a document type that doesn't have any custom class, but it does basically specify what kind of files we are interested in. So I'm going to specify we're interested in MP4, M4V, and MOV. Those are like the typical H.264 movie files. And then we are a viewer. We're not going to edit these. We're not going to change these files. So we don't need to view them. And we are not, I think this means if it's a bundle or not. Yeah, it's a bundle right there. So these are not bundle file types. And this should be enough to tell the system that we are in fact interested in that kind of file. Finally, what we want to do is when the application is opened for the first time, we want to be able to open a document. And we also want to be able to open a document when we go to File, Open. So this menu, the standard menu item, actually, I should show it here. So this File Open, we want that to trigger opening a document so that way we can choose a video file and progress from there. If you look at this menu item, it already has an action for open document. Make this a little bigger. Yeah, so there's an open document which is sent to the first responder. And since our AppDelegate is part of the responder chain, we can declare open document there and it will pick it up. So if we look at the app as it is, all of these are grayed out because there is no responder for those various kinds of actions. So what we are going to do, I don't want the format menu. What we are going to do is specify that we can, what we are going to do when we open a document. So that's fairly easy. So we'll just call the IB action open document, and this is going to be called whenever that open dialog is called. And what we are, particular case, oops, I touched the cable, sorry. What we are going to do in this particular case is open an NS open panel. This is the standard dialog that you get when you say file open. So this thing. So we're going to make one of those. We're just going to call it open panel. And we are going to make a new one, NS open panel. So for those of you that are used to Swift, you would typically do something like, let me do it on another line. So you'll probably do something like var open panel equals NS open panel. You'll probably do something like that. So Objective-C works a little differently. This var doesn't really exist in Objective-C, but you do specify the type before with a little star to indicate that it's a pointer. If you're not familiar with C pointers, you can just basically remember that any Objective-C object always has a star. It's a little cheap trick to get started with. And then you specify the variable name, and then you say the type, and then you call the constructor. So the constructor in this case is called open panel, and that will give you a fully fledged open panel. So if you go in here, it says creates a new instance of NS open panel. So you can always command click any of these methods to get more information. So for example, our delegate method before, we can go, you want this one? We can go and read up on it. Though it doesn't always have information in the docs, if you hold down Option, you'll get the documentation directly. So you can kind of learn about what something is going to do. So now that we have our open panel, we're going to specify what kind of file types we are interested in. So this is an array. So I'm just going to specify those 3 file extensions that we mentioned before. So M4V, MP4, and then MOV. And this will allow us to only select those kind of files. And then we're going to run our open panel. So open panel, begin with completion handler. And this begin with completion handler is rather new. There are much older ways of using NS open panel that we won't ever have to deal with again, which is kind of nice. Yay, modernization of AppKit. But basically, so this result right here is going to indicate what button was pressed, so either open or cancel. And we are interested, obviously, in the open case. So if the result is equal to NS file handling panel OK button, so those are the 2 buttons, and they're basically weird constants, so we'll just use the constant itself instead of minus 1000 or something. I think minus 1000 is for model dialogues. In any case, we'll check if the user pressed the OK button, and then for every URL that the user chooses, so a URL represents the file that they chose. So for every one, we will go ahead and open it. So conveniently, there's a URLs property. There is also a URL without the S property, which is deprecated, and it gives you the first object in this list, but you should use the multiple because the user might select multiple files. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to call our same delegate method right here to let that handle the actual opening.
We have a comment. This person is asking if we can explain what we are making again.
Okay, so yeah, not a problem. So basically, while making our Let's Play channel, we ran into an issue where standard definition content is kind of cropped in this weird way. There's this letterbox that's applied. There's 1 pixel of black at the bottom, and everything's kind of squished, even though it's intended for widescreen. So like this green circle is supposed to be a circle, not an oval. Though in Pikmin, it's very hard to see what's supposed to be an oval and a circle. But we're just going to say that it's supposed to be 3:2 aspect ratio. So what this software is going to do is resize it. First, it's going to upscale it so we have some better resolution, and it's going to resize it so that way we don't have the black bars anymore. And there aren't many Mac apps that do this in a very simple way. Like you can use Handbrake to do it. iMovie does not do it since it's quote unquote simple. I'm sure Final Cut does it, but I don't have Final Cut. So that's what we are going to be doing. And I don't think we have the app anymore running, so I can give you a demo, but we have a small version of the file because this computer is old and we're using the better computer to actually record this one. But we are going to be turning this video into this one essentially. So that's our goal today. And to do that, we are going to again call our delegate. So there is a convenience in Objective-C anyways. I'm not sure if it's probably in Swift too. There's a convenience constant for NS application shared application. That's just called NSApp. But it's short for NS application shared application. Like it's the same exact thing. I wish there was something like that in UIKit too, but oh well. And then open file, we'll just pass the URL's path since we are expecting paths here. And what this is going to do is when we call our open dialog and we say okay, it's going to call our existing delegates. We only have to do the work here. So we also want to make sure that when the app launches, we are immediately given the chance to choose a file, but we want the app to close right away if it was open from the Finder. So the use case of this is kind of like the archive utility, where if you double click a zip file, it will open, decompress the zip file, and then close. And I kind of like that method of operation. So that's kind of what we want to simulate here. To be able to do that, we are going to make a few instance variables to kind of remember our state. So we'll get into why these are called these in a bit, but I want to remember 2 things. I want to remember if we did launch already, because the callback for open file, if we read the documentation, it will say that it's called right before application did finish launching. So if we get an open file here before we finished launching here, then we can kind of know that we launched from the Finder and we didn't open the application and then are expecting to give commands. So there's a question, is this assembly C? What is Swift? So this is Objective-C. It's a strict superset of C such that, a strict subset, in one direction, I'm dyslexic. Basically, it's an augmentation of C with an object-oriented model and runtime, fully dynamic language, and Swift is Apple's newer programming language that they're kind of migrating everything over to. So in any case, since the did launch will enable us to tell if we ran from here or if we ran from here, then we can know if we can quit afterwards. So to know if we are going to quit, we'll save another variable called close on finish. So once we finish processing a video file, we can go ahead and quit. So we'll code in close on finish later, but for the time being, we will use our did finish launching, or our did launch. So in did finish launching, we will go ahead and set it to yes because we did launch. And in our open file, we will do the opposite. So in open file, at the top of it, we are going to ask if we did launch already, because this will be no if we just double click the file in the Finder. And then we can go ahead and say that we will close on launch, or close when we finish. That way we can clean up because the user didn't open the application directly. So we will close on finish there. And then as a final step, when we do finish launching, we want to open up that open dialog so that way the user can choose something. So what we can do very simply is we check if we're not closing on finish, which means that open file was never called. Then we can go ahead and open a new document. Open a new document browser to choose a document. So we can just pass nil here, or self. I guess self is more proper. It doesn't matter. Since this is the sender right here that we're filling in, we don't use the sender anywhere, so it does not impact the application at all. So if we go ahead and run this, very simply, we should get an open dialog that shows up. Yeah, so we get an open dialog, and then we can choose a file, and it allows us to choose it. If we choose anything else, you see it won't let me choose this Xcode project, for instance. We can say open, and now we need to do something with that file. So I plan on making like a sort of job queue, so that way if multiple files are opened, we can kind of deal with that. So in main menu, very simply, we are going to keep this window right here, and let's configure it a little. So we will be calling it Video Resizer Queue, so it has a nice name. And let's open this up. And we want a pointer to this window, so we can rename this right here to Queue Window. And then make sure it's all linked up. Ooh, no, this one. So we had a window before, let's just make it a queue window. And that will rename it right here to make it looking nice. And then we're gonna drag a table view in here. So we'll go over to the objects, we'll search for table view. And this table view is basically gonna represent our queue. So we only want, in Cocoa, unlike UIKit, the table views are subviews of scroll views, so you need to click a few times to get into it. But once you do, then you can start configuring it. So we only want one column. We don't, let me check on my reference so I don't forget anything. But basically, we don't want headers at the top since it's just going to be a queue. We do want alternating rows, and we don't want to highlight any of the rows. We don't want to select anything, and I believe that should be all good and dandy. And then we want to configure the cell a bit. So let's make this a bit larger. I think I use like 64. Let me double check. We want this looking nice after all. So I use 56. So we can go ahead and resize this to 56. And then we can go and bring some stuff in. So let's bring in an icon. So just to start with, we can bring in an app icon to represent the icon of the video file, so things look nice. We'll resize this to 48 pixels by 48 pixels.
We have another comment.
Uh-huh.
Pretty cool, this person said. Keep it up, dude. Where will you release this?
This will probably be eventually, like, what I'm going to be putting together today is not necessarily a user-facing application. Like, most of the configuration is going to be done via code. So eventually I'll probably finish up a nicer user interface, an icon, things like that. And then we can go ahead and I'll go ahead and publish it on the Mac App Store as like a small utility app. And then we can do streams like this to kind of learn more. And you can buy the app directly, or you can copy the code from the stream. That seems fair, I would say. And if you want to rip us off, you can rip us off too. It don't matter to me. But I do want to position everything nicely. So we'll put an icon there. We'll get a progress bar. So we're kind of imitating. Oh, let me be in here. We're kind of imitating like a typical progress dialog and what it would look like. So I'll put that there. We'll drag this down a little, resize it. And then I'm not going to bother with auto layout because it gives me a headache for most simple things when we can just do that. And this will always stay on the left. This will resize along the middle, and so will this. So this can be a little closer here. That's better. So we'll configure, like we'll actually put stuff in here at a later time, but this should get us started on what we're expecting as like the app to look like. So here I'm resizing the actual scroll view, so that way when you resize the window, everything resizes with it. So let's go ahead and build and run this to make sure that things look as we expect them. And also, if you don't have a Twitch account, feel free to bug us on Twitter. It will probably bug us enough that we can respond on here. So Lynn can follow up and see. Yeah, those are liked. So unless they reply directly, then we can go ahead and answer those. Because I think Twitch requires like an account or something.
Yeah, I think you need to have an account in order to comment or ask a question.
So ask via Twitter, either our at Linh-chan and Dimi-chan, or do it at Linh-chan and Dimi-chan. So LINH and LINHCH. I have a keyboard right in front of me. What am I doing? So ask questions via Linh-chan and Linh-chan and Dimi-chan. There we go. So ask questions there, and Lynn will reply to them, and we can go there. So yeah, they'll pop up right here when you get.
Okay.
And hopefully we can have some fun learning about Mac app programming and working with AppKit and bindings and things like that that are not available on iOS. So since we have a nice queue window now, we verify that we have one. Yeah, so we do have one right here. There's nothing in it because we don't have, we didn't hook up our table view to any data source or anything. And we're not actually going to hook it up to anything. We're just going to use bindings to do most of what we want. But before we use bindings, we need to have a object to represent our job. So when each file is going to be represented by a job object. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file. So this is going to be a Cocoa class, subclass of NSObject. If you're using Swift, it's just going to be an object. You don't need a subclass. Actually, maybe you do for bindings and stuff like that to work. But nice and simple. We'll just create it right there. What is it? And first I like working backwards, so Xcode always pushes you to the implementation file, which is the .m, and I like to work backwards from the .h and go from there. So first we're going to basically describe the basics of what our thing is going to be represented by. So we want the original path, so that way we can save the final version afterwards. So we're going to make a non-atomic copy of the string path. So this is a string property that's called path, and that's where we're going to put the original path, and we're going to derive the destination or the resized video from this path. This series was originally live streamed, so we split it up into 30-minute episodes so it can be uploaded. Since it does take more planning to make this kind of content, we don't plan on producing it very often, but if you do enjoy it, please subscribe on YouTube or Twitch and let us know in the comments below or on Twitter. Thanks! Bye, Chan-chans!